Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are pushing past, the usual clean energy suspects, solar, batteries, and we're getting our hands dirty with something a lot more agricultural. We're talking about cereal straw.
And it's a critical topic
Yeah.
because straw, it might just look like farm waste, but it represents this immense, completely global resource that we really haven't managed to tap into yet.
So it's not just waste.
Not at all. Our sources are clear on this. We're looking at a fuel with a really solid energy density, about 17.4 gigajoules per ton,
Mm.
and it has low ash content. This is basically stored solar energy just waiting for us.
Okay. That sounds, well, almost too good to be true. If it's everywhere and it's packed with energy, why aren't we already seeing power plants running on, just giant bales of straw? What's the roadblock?
The roadblock is purely physical, and it's a couple things. First, straw has a terrible bulk density, just 40 to 50 kilograms per cubic meter.
You need huge buildings just to store it.
Exactly. But the real killer is what happens when you try to burn those big bales directly.
Yeah.
You get incomplete combustion, horrible smoke, and particulate emissions. And the big one, slag. At the high temperatures you need for efficiency, say 1200 to 1400 Celsius, you get this severe slag formation.
Slag, that's that sticky, glassy stuff that just gums up and ruins all the expensive machinery.
It's a complete nightmare. It clogs the boilers, it destroys the refractory linings. So that whole direct combustion idea, it's a non-starter,
Okay.
which forces us to pivot to a much smarter technology. Fluidized bed gasification gets the most energy out and minimizes that slag problem.
Okay.
But it comes with one absolute non-negotiable requirement.
And what's that?
It has to have a continuous, uniform, and precisely sized flow of fuel. It can't handle a big, messy bale. It needs perfect little fuel particles. And that is the entire mission of the research we're diving into today.
Right. How to design a system that can turn a huge, unruly bale of straw into a perfect stream of tiny, consistent fuel bits. So let's really unpack that engineering challenge. I mean, cutting metal or wood is one thing, those rigid. Straw is the exact opposite. It's pliable, fibrous.
It bends, it compresses. It's notorious for just binding up cutting blades or stalling out a motor because it wraps itself around everything.
It's a deceptively complex problem.
It is. You need a huge amount of force, but you also need incredible precision. And the size they're aiming for isn't just a random number. The gasification systems, which use these screw feeders to move the fuel, they need a theoretical cut length of just 1.5 to 2.0 centimeters.
So anything bigger than that, and the whole machine just physically jams.
That's the first hurdle.
Yeah.
But the need for that tiny size goes way beyond just the mechanics. It goes deep into the thermodynamics of the reaction itself.
How so?
Well, if you have big, chunky pieces of biomass in there, you get incomplete combustion. You're just wasting energy.
This is where that concept of being thermally thin comes in, right? Talk us through that.
Yeah, think of it like building a campfire. If you throw on a massive log that's thermally thick, the heat takes forever to get to the core.
Right, it smolders for ages.
But if you use thin kindling or wood shavings, those are thermally thin. They heat up almost instantly and release their energy really fast. For this kind of high-efficiency gasification, we need every single particle of straw to be thermally thin.
So it's not just about fitting it through a chute, it's about making sure every piece cooks at the same time, basically.
You got it.
Mm.
And when you chop it that small, you do a few things. You dramatically increase the surface area, you increase the pore size. But maybe the most important chemical change is that you reduce the cellulose crystallinity of the straw.
Whoa, okay. Cellulose crystallinity. In simple terms, what is that, and why do we want less of it?
So cellulose is the main structural fiber in the straw. It's arranged in these really dense, highly ordered crystalline structures. Think of it like a tightly wound bundle of microscopic ropes.
Okay, very strong.
Very strong and very hard to break down with heat and chemistry. By physically shredding the straw into these tiny pieces, you're not just cutting it, you're fracturing that ordered structure. You're fraying the ropes.
Creating more weak points.
Exactly. You create all these new, accessible sites for the thermochemical process to attack the material. So the mechanical step, the chopping, is actually preconditioning the chemistry of the fuel for maximum efficiency.
That really sets the stage perfectly. They needed a machine that could do all that continuously, uniformly, down to 1.5 centimeters. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of what they built. Where did they start?
They started with the foundation, the frame. It was made from heavy-duty angle iron, built to be incredibly rigid. Because if that frame vibrates even a tiny bit under the force of cutting compacted straw,
Oh, your precision is gone.
it's gone. So that solid base supported everything.
And on top of that, the feeder, This is what you mentioned earlier, the revolving chute, which to me seems like the most elegant part of the whole design.
It really is. It was basically a big open-ended box made of galvanized steel, but the key was its size. They designed it specifically to hold two small bales at the same time.
Two bales? Why two?
It's the weight. The weight and the friction of those two bales stacked on top of each other creates this constant, powerful downward force. It literally presses the straw into the cutting unit below.
Ah, that's how they solved the binding problem. You don't need a complicated mechanical press, you just use the weight of the material itself to guarantee a continuous feed.
It's a brilliant, simple solution. So now you have the material being fed consistently to the cutting unit. That was made of 16 high-tensile steel blades on central shaft, spinning just above a screen with 12-millimeter holes.
But the real precision came from the restricting grate, right? That seems to be the component that let them dial everything in.
Yes. This grate was basically a set of 16 prongs arranged in an arc right around the blades. The crucial part is that it was mounted on a notched arm so an operator could move it.
Closer or further away from the blades?
Exactly. And by doing that, you directly control the depth of cut. You control how much straw gets presented to the blades with each rotation. This one part turns a brute force chopper into a precision instrument.
And to run it all, an 8-horsepower gasoline engine? But the key for the research wasn't just the power, it was how they measured it.
Right. They installed specialized torque meter sensors to get an accurate reading of the power output on every single run, because you can't optimize what you can't measure. And they measured everything. The testing protocol was exhaustive. They used a specific type of straw monopole, winter wheat, and ran 147 separate experiments.
147, wow.
Yeah, it allowed them to map the machine's entire performance range. They systematically varied two key inputs, the rotational speed across 7 settings from 800 up to 2500 RPM,
Okay.
and the depth of cut, also across 7 settings, from a tiny 3.9 millimeters all the way up to 32 millimeters.
That is methodical. So let's get to the data. What did they find? Let's start with feed rate. How fast could they actually get straw through this thing?
They found a super clear relationship. Both the speed and the depth of cut had a massive impact. But here's the part that's a little counterintuitive.
Okay.
They found that decreasing the depth of cut, or increasing the cutting speed, actually increased the straw feed rate.
Yeah, hang on. If you decrease the depth of cut, if you take a smaller bite each time, how does the overall feed rate go up? That feels backwards.
It does, but it's because the sheer rotational speed of the blade starts to dominate the equation.
Yeah.
At 2,500 RPM, the blades are moving so fast they're just pulling and processing the material through more quickly than the depth setting can limit it. The speed just overwhelmed the system.
I see. So speed is king for throughput.
It is. The highest feed rate they got was an impressive 10.52 kilograms per minute, and that was at the top speed of 2,500 RPM.
Okay, so more speed equals more straw process. But what's the cost? I mean, what did that do to power consumption?
It went up
Yeah.
a lot. This is the trade-off. Running the machine faster dramatically increased the power demand. It jumped from about 1.76 horsepower at the low end, 800 RPM, to a staggering 7.76 horsepower at 2,500 RPM.
That's a 340% increase in power.
A massive jump.
Yeah.
And power also went up as they increased the depth of cut, at least up to a certain point.
So if the machine is using 4 times as much fuel at high speed, doesn't that undermine the whole point of this being an efficient energy source? Why would you ever run it that fast?
That is the exact right question. And the answer is in a metric called unit power consumption. This is the key. It's not just how much power you're using, it's how much power it takes to process 1 ton of straw.
Ah, the efficiency of the process.
Right. And what the analysis showed was that the unit power consumption actually improved. It got more efficient as the cutting speed went up.
That's fascinating. So even though the motor is screaming, it's actually being more efficient overall.
Yes, because the feed rate, the amount of straw being processed, increased proportionally faster than the power consumption did. So you get more finished product per hour for your energy input.
And what's the bottom line on that energy input?
This is the big conclusion for feasibility. The total energy needed to run the chopper and prepare the fuel was less than 0.2% of the energy actually contained within the straw itself.
Less than 0.2%. That's practically nothing. That's the green light.
It is the green light.
Okay, so they proved it was fast and economical, but did it actually work? Did this high-speed, high-efficiency system produce the right size particles? Did they hit that 1.5 to 2.0 centimeter target?
They hit it dead on. Depending on the settings, the final chopped straw length was in this very narrow range, from 14.49 to 18.85 millimeters.
Perfect. right in the sweet spot for the gasifier.
Perfectly in range. They also found that increasing the cutting speed significantly decreased the final straw length.
That makes intuitive sense. The blades are coming around faster, so they take a smaller bite each time.
Exactly. The longest pieces were found at the slowest speed. But the really amazing discovery wasn't just about the average length. It was about the consistency and the way the straw was being broken down, which they found out by doing a microscopic sieve analysis.
So they sifted the final product to check for consistency.
They did, and the results are great. About 85 to 90% of all the material fell into a very narrow band of sieve sizes. But the truly illuminating part was when they put those particles under a microscope.
What did they see?
They saw that the size reduction wasn't just simple cutting, like dicing a vegetable. It was being dominated by longitudinal shearing.
So it wasn't just being chopped across the stem, it was being ripped apart lengthwise, down the grain of the fiber.
Precisely. Think about it. Just cutting across the straw only exposes two tiny new surfaces at the ends. But longitudinal shearing splits the entire straw stem open, again and again, along its natural internal structure.
And that's what creates that massive internal surface area you talked about. That's what breaks down the cellulose crystallinity.
That's it. The physical act of chopping was literally redesigning the fuel at a microscopic level to be more reactive. They even quantified it. The material in the biggest sieve size, they saw those straws were mostly just split in half, longitudinally.
Okay.
But when you got to the finer sieves, say the ones with a 9 mm average length, those little pieces were the result of being sheared 5 to 10 times.
So it's being shredded into tiny filaments, not just cut into little tubes.
That's a perfect way to put it. And the finest dust they collected, with an average size of 0.5 mm, they estimated that came from about 100 longitudinal shearing events. It's a complete structural overhaul of the material, perfectly engineered for what comes next.
This is just a stunning piece of engineering. They took a raw material problem and solved it with such focus. The system works, continuous, uniform straw at the right size, and the energy cost to do it is, well, it's negligible.
It really is. The simple elegance of using the bale zone weight for feeding, combined with that adjustable grate for precision, it's just smart design.
So what's the big takeaway for anyone looking to apply this?
The key takeaway is that you now have these two critical tunable levers, depth of cut and cutting speed. An operator can now decide what they need to prioritize. They can crank up the speed to maximize their feed rate, or they can throttle back a bit to get the absolute lowest power consumption.
All while staying within that required particle size.
All while keeping the gasifier perfectly happy. It makes the whole concept of straw to energy conversion massively more viable.
It really does. And so we'll leave you, our listener, with this final thought to chew on. This whole deep dive was about an intense focus on reducing one single metric straw length by just a few millimeters, and that unlocked a major clean energy pathway. So what other massive global challenges in energy or manufacturing could be solved not by inventing some brand new fuel, but by applying the same kind of hyper-precise small-scale engineering to simply optimize the raw, natural materials that are already all around us?
Something to ponder.
Something to ponder until our next deep dive.